Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with Yoseka. Today I will be telling you tips for how to maintain your fountain pen. Now we get questions about this all the time, so I figured I would make this video, which should be helpful for beginners and intermediate users, just to figure out, you've been using your pen a little bit, maybe for a couple months, and then you start to think, am I doing this right? Am I doing the things that will help me keep this pen good for decades, like something I can use for the rest of my life? Because at the end of the day, that's something that's really helpful about fountain pens, is that you can keep refilling them and they should last you forever, basically. So today will be about maintaining your fountain pens. So my first tip is to wash your pen out. This is something that's helpful even if you've been using your pen regularly. It's something that's good to do periodically, but it's also something that's very good to do when you know you won't be using your pen for a long time. This will help prevent your pen from getting ink caked up, for lack of a better word, on the nib, in the feed, and over time, ink does evaporate, so this will cause the particles to kind of, cake up. I guess that's the best word. You can kind of see it almost happening here in this pen. There's a little bit of a glare, but you can see like at the back, the ink is still flowing very smoothly, but there are some particles that are beginning to clump together because the ink does evaporate, leaving the ink particles behind. So just think about like watercolor. When watercolor dries up, sometimes there's the little pigment bits left behind, and that's almost what's happening in your fountain pen. Even if you're using the same ink all the time, it'll just happen naturally. So I recommend washing your pen out even if you've been using it. My second tip is to be aware of what ink you are putting into your pen. So whether it's a pigment ink, a shimmer ink, a dye-based ink, this is always good to know because then you know how to care for your pen the best way. You'll know what steps to take for the certain ink that you use. So for pigment ink, it'll usually say it on the box like this because pigment ink is usually waterproof, which means that once this dries out in your pen, it's staying in there, it's not really washing out as easily as the other non-pigment, which are called dye-based inks. So if you have a pigment ink, you're going to want to make sure that if you're not using your pen for even like a couple weeks, you want to wash your pen out. And you don't have to like completely waste the ink that's inside your pen. You can definitely open up your pen and expel whatever ink is inside there into the same container that you were using or into a separate container if you have one, so that you can refill your pen in the future and you're not just wasting ink. Now there are also other types of inks to be aware of that are not pigment inks but can be permanent. So there are other inks like iron gall or carbon. Like the carbon black ink I know is very popular, but this is a waterproof and archival ink, which means when it dries out in your pen, it's gonna stay there for a very long time. So you wanna make sure you're washing your pen out periodically to make sure that it's not drying up in your pen and doing what we call clogging your pen. So if you have any of these inks, you wanna make sure you're cleaning it more frequently or just using your pen very frequently to keep that ink flow very steady. Another specialty ink type that you might have is a shimmer ink. This might also be called pearl or glitter, iridescent, something like that, but it means that there are larger particles in the ink that get suspended. So in the bottle, it might look like a normal ink, but when you flip it upside down, there usually will be some type of other particle that is settling to the bottom. So when you shake it up, you'll see it start to mix in. That means you have a shimmer ink, if it doesn't say it on the bottle or the bottle is in a language you can't read. So for shimmer inks, what we recommend is storing your pen on its side. Like this pen that I showed earlier, you can see that I've been storing it on its side. The shimmer will always settle to the bottom and it won't be always going towards the nib like this. If you store it directly upright like this, the shimmer will always be settling downwards towards the nib. And if you do it like this, all the shimmer will be back here, which is fine, but your pen might just dry out a little bit faster. Like this, you can make sure that the shimmer is always in contact with the ink, but it's not necessarily being forced downward towards the nib or up here on the other end. So I recommend storing your pens sideways. That's why people usually will have a pen tray like this, so you can always make sure your pens are very nice and in this neutral position on your desk or in storage if you're not using it. My third tip is to not give up. Give your pen a thorough cleaning if you have a lot of ink caked up on the inside, it's not writing properly. If something is going wrong, do not give up, give it a very thorough cleaning. Some brands offer a fountain pen cleaning solution, and you can use this to clean out your pen periodically or if there's something that's very lodged in your pen. Some brands also carry maintenance kits like this, which have a syringe and something for you to like flush out the pen if you need something like that. And you can also use a diluted dish soap solution, like really dilute it, but this will also help dislodge some of those caked up ink particles on the inside of your pen. And when you're cleaning out the pen, it's also good to remove the nib if your nib is removable. This will help you make sure that you are getting all of the ink out from underneath the nib. So example, on this Lamy pen, the nib is removable and you can see there's all these shimmer particles in there that might be contributing to a more blocked flow, like that. And so if you're able to clean that out, sometimes use a gentle cloth on this area. This is a paper towel, but if you have like a microfiber cloth, that also works great. You can clean that out a little bit better. So here's our soapy water mixture. And here is our pen that has the caked up residue. And I will do my best to clean this out. Sometimes it's helpful to run this under running water so the pressure from the faucet can actually push out a lot of the clogged up ink, but you have to be careful. We're not responsible for any parts of the pen that may get lost in the drain. So make sure to get like a mesh or something to cover the drain, or even use the plunger to block the drain so you don't lose any important parts of your pen. But here we're just going to use this jar. And I'm going to see if anything comes out. Yeah, okay, so a lot of that caked on ink is coming out, which is great. You can see there's even some particles in the water, and that's good. All of that getting dislodged is what we want. And sometimes you can even just dunk the entire pen gently so that you don't damage the nib or anything, and let this soak overnight. Make sure not to forget about it so that you don't start getting mold or anything inside of your pen. And make sure not to do this with a steel nib that is not stainless steel. So don't do this with any dip steel nibs that are not stainless steel because they will rust. But you can see there's a lot of that ink getting broken up in here. And the dish soap is doing a lot of work to break down the ink particles that have dried out on the inside of this pen. Yeah, see, now it's really coming out, and that's what we really want. So this pen was completely clogged before and could not be written with, and this is probably the reason why. And to fully clean out a pen, you should actually keep rinsing it and cleaning out the water until it is completely clear. That is how you'll know you've gotten all of the caked up and dried out ink particles successfully flushed out of the pen. So I'm going to go change the water and I will be right back. Wow, you can see all of that dried ink coming out of the pen. And this pen does not have any cartridge in it, but has so much ink coming out just because it's all been dried out in there for so long. Okay, so I have returned with some clear water. Oh, there's so many bubbles in there. But this is clean, fresh water. And usually this is what we recommend starting with when you have a pen that you just want to clean out. We only recommend going for the dish soap option if this clean, plain water does not work to dislodge the ink. And since this pen has been clogged up for, I'm not sure how long, actually, but since it's been clogged for quite some time, we just went straight to the dish soap option. So I'll just dunk that again. So referencing the method that I talked about before, removing the nib, I'm actually going to do that for this to make sure that this gets a more thorough clean. And you can just slide the nib off like this. you can clean these two pieces separately. You can see there's a lot of ink that gets trapped behind the nib. So if you're able to take the nib apart to clean it, that's really the best if you're experiencing a very, very intense clog and your pen's not writing properly and the ink's not flowing properly. This is really the best option for cleaning out a very heavy-duty blockage. So I'm actually going to just dunk this and clean this off camera because it will be a little hard to see. But for this, a lot of ink should come out now. Yeah, look at that. Now all of that ink is coming out really, really quickly. And again, this will go much faster if you use a sink and use the water pressure to kind of help you flush all this ink out. This is also what people use the syringe for. If you have a syringe, sometimes there's an attachment for the back of the pen. Right here, if you're able to attach a syringe to the back and squeeze to force the water through, that will also help clear the blockage a lot faster. But we're basically going to repeat this step until the water runs clear, so I will do that, and you can watch the time lapse if you enjoy that. So as you can see, I'm using the syringe to kind of pressurize the feed and force more water through the feed at a time. You don't have to do this, it'll just make the process happen a lot faster, and it'll help dislodge the larger particles of dried up ink. You can see there's still a little bit of ink on this part of the nib. I'll show. So you can see the part that I'm still trying to dislodge is right in here. There's some ink that's really stubborn and just won't get out of this little crevice. If this is happening to you, there are some pens where you're able to remove this feed. That's what this is called, the darker plastic on the inside. You're able to remove the feed from the pen. We usually don't do this on Lamy Safari pens, but if you want a video showing how to take apart a pen to clean it, let us know and we'll try to make that for you. Another method I want to show for cleaning a pen, if you don't have a syringe like this but can kind of achieve the same effect, is if you have a converter. And I think most people who are using specialty inks in their pen have a converter that goes with the pen. So you just simply insert the converter like normal, and you'll basically use that piston mechanism like this to expel and intake water. And this will help kind of give more pressure to dislodging any ink that might be stuck in the feed. So you can simply intake the water like that and expel it. Now obviously you want to make sure that you're switching out the water, but this will help achieve more pressure and dislodging within the feed. I personally find that if I had to choose between the different methods for getting pressure through the feed between the converter, the syringe, or the faucet, I honestly just choose the faucet. If your water pressure is like fairly good, it provides enough pressure to push water through the feed. And I don't think you really have to use the converter, which will require you to keep filling it with
the unclean water or clean water. You have to keep switching out your water jar if you're using the converter method. Whereas if you have the faucet, as long as you block the drain and keep water flowing, that water pressure is usually good enough to dislodge most ink clogs. All right, so this is just clean water because you can see here that I've dislodged pretty much all of the ink that was dried out in the nib section. I know it might be a little hard to see because of all the glare, but there's no more black stuff clogging this pen up. It is all clear. So since we used soap, you want to make sure the last step is that you rinse this thoroughly with clean water, because you don't want soap interacting with any of your inks, and you don't want soap staying inside of your pen for too long. So we'll just give it some more rinses in the clean water, get any last little bits and remnants of ink out. But you can see the water here is much cleaner than before. And that is exactly what we want. When the water is running clear like this, that's how you know you have cleared the ink clogs. So I'm gonna just leave it in here actually to kind of get all of the little bubbles out. And when I come back, I'll give it one final rinse and it should write like normal. Another good test to see if you fully clean the pen is drying it off on a paper towel or other gentle microfiber cloth and see if any more ink is drawn out by the fibers of the cloth. And it looks like there is still some ink stuck in here, so I will leave this to soak and hopefully when I come back it'll be in a little bit of a better state. Okay, so I changed out the water one more time and I let the nib section soak in there. So it is the moment of truth. Let's pull it out and see how it looks. Okay, so let's do the paper towel test and look at that. Completely clean. Amazing. No more ink lodged inside here at all. It's on my hands now. No more is inside of this pen. I'll give this another rinse just to make sure there's no soap residue left in here. Then we can reattach the nib and it should be ready to write. Okay, after that rinse, this should be good. I don't see any bubbles in here anymore. So there shouldn't be any soap in there and we can reattach the nib. I clean this off separately, so yeah, the nibs clean really easily, and especially when you're dealing with some of these more replaceable interchangeable steel nibs, it's very easy to get a good clean on these. So I'll just slide that back on. Very nice, good as new. Let's choose a color to ink it up with. Sophie, your pen has been cleaned.
No way.
It's like good as new. I put a converter on it, and if you want to choose an ink to fill it up with, we have to test and see if it writes unlike before.
Wow.
Do you want to choose an ink?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's go choose one. Okay, we're going with a green. Forest Green by Kobe. Very good. Let's go fill it up. Okay, so this is the ink Sophie chose. There we go. A nice fill. There we go. Okay, the moment of truth. Live candid, first time. So you can write on that side there. Wow. Writes perfectly. How does it feel?
So smooth.
Yay. Back from the dead. Yes, indeed. Back from the dead.
Back from the dead.
Yay. I'm so glad it writes.
I'm so impressed
Yay.
with what you did.
Thanks for lending your pen to this experiment.
Anytime.
And then my last tip, if you are having any trouble whatsoever you can bring it to a trained professional or someone in the community, because the fountain pen community is very large. This might be a niche hobby, but you'll be surprised to find out how many people around you are very into fountain pens and know a lot about fountain pens and have been using it for a long time, because fountain pens have been around for hundreds of years. So there are nibmeisters. You can look them up in your local area. Some of them offer tuning services if your pen is not writing the way that it used to or not the way you want. You can also even bring it to a friend if your friend is very knowledgeable about fountain pens, or you can even inquire online. There's a lot of threads out there, there's videos, and you can just look around for any information that you might need. All right, those are all of my tips for maintaining your fountain pen. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them below. And would you guys like to see a fountain pen starter guide if you are more of a beginner, or would you like to see more intermediate pen maintenance and upkeep and tip videos? Feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!